XRP will go nuclear if this happens. It's bigger than you think. ETFs, XRP ETFs. This is something I have been calling for a while now. I feel like I have been calling for the last possibly like the whole month of how important the ETFs are. Even more important than rate cuts, more important than the Clarity Bill Act that we have been talking this month. So smash that like button if you guys haven't already. But again, XRP Bank is now final. The next part is for the XRP ETFs because the regulation is set in.
Full update. We're going to get into that. We're also looking at Wellgistics Health is seeking to leverage XRP payments for 1.4 trillion pharma trade market. There's a ton of Ripple and XRP news. We're also going to take a look at, can Ripple seed their new bank, their national bank charter once it's...
So yeah, this is the biggest problem. Will they be able to continue with their bank to process all the transactions for XRP Ledger?
Approved with their XRP that they have in escrow. I'm going to answer all of that and more. Let's go.
You guys have been around for a long time, so you've seen these market cycles ebb and flow, and now we're in one where digital assets are now finally kind of growing up and making their way to Wall Street and their trek to Washington and all of that. You say it's a nascent market. How big could this be?
I think that crypto can be bigger than anyone imagines because the people who focus on cap table and say there's not enough money to make these cap tables that big, that's not true because it's got nothing to do with the amount of money. I mean, it does have to do with the amount of money, but not all of the crypto is going to be out there trading. So the cap table, it's like an AI company being worth, $500 billion. It's because there are only a limited number of shares that actually trade on it. And so that's how it's going to work with crypto.
We already see it with XRP. Like a lot of people keep holding their XRP and don't sell it for a forbidden amount of years, maybe like let's say 2 years, which means that the price like that XRP is gone off the market.
Going to buy it and hold it and store it.
So what he's saying here is that, people look at the supply for XRP, it has 100 billion units, right? People assume there's so much of it everywhere, there's going to be enough for everybody else. But when you look underneath all of the cracks and, where the XRP actually is on what exchanges, there's really only 8 or 9% of XRP available on exchanges. And that's the current circulating supply, 8 to 9% of 59 billion tokens. So you're looking at rough like 5-6 billion tokens actually left on exchanges. And that numbers has been depleting over the last few months. And so once these ETFs get approved, is there going to be enough XRP on the open market to fund all of these things, as well as the rest of the public, right? Because now you're going to have crypto regulation. You're going to have tens of millions of new people coming in just in America, let alone the rest of the world. So how much, XRP and other crypto assets will actually be left? That's what he's saying here.
What's Ripple going to do with its 40?
The thing is, there's so many coins right now. I really think a burn, if in big amounts, like millions of dollars of transactions, will make a big burn for XRP. Like, just right now we're burning $3,000 per day. Right now, XRP supply is still super huge. XRP ETFs could do this supply shock sort of thing, but we are really waiting for many more factors than just the XRP ETFs. Because if, for example, XRP goes to $10 and somebody sells everything, it will dump back to $7 or $6 again.
Billion XRP. Given that they filed to be a bank, there's one of the leading theories that they just hold that on their balance sheet. They get their banking license and they become a top 20 capitalized bank in the world. That's with XRP at $3. XRP goes to, some multiple of $3. They become a top 10 bank or even the top bank in terms of capitalization. That's pretty astounding.
That would be insanely astounding. And I think
what he's talking about there is Ripple becoming a globally, systemically important bank. It's called a GSIB. We've talked about those before, like Chase Bank and a few other giant banks are so systematically important that if they went down, the whole system might not work. So Ripple could put them in such a power play here where they're so important to the world's financial system that they really can't go down, and the government would step in to support them if anything happened. So that's what we're talking about here, the level of...
I don't know if this will really happen, and the scenario of XRP going down, it's already right now at, all-time highs. It's already profitable. So the scenario where it goes down is only if all other companies go down. And I don't think the US government is going to save it like people are saying.
Of craziness. So
it is XRP. But again, they're not working with the government yet. They're working with the banks. And this is the big difference. Scenario where Ripple doesn't ever sell the XRP escrow. This is like, how much? $400-500 million.
Let me play this 13-second clip because then it goes into what we're talking about here. Can Ripple use XRP to fund the bank? That's what I wanted to answer. Here we go.
It's hard to say. If they get approved as a bank and then announce they're not going to sell any more XRP onto the market because they want to capitalize the bank, I think that would be an enormous impetus for price. That's gigantic. It's hard to say if they get.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. Like, what could this look like? We know Ripple has applied for a national bank charter aiming to be both regulated in state and federal authorities. However, banks traditionally use fiat cash, government securities like treasuries, and certain approved assets for capitalization.
Like, a lot of people are saying that XRP is going to replace the US dollar. I don't think that will happen ever.
Inclusion of crypto as bank capital depends on regulatory guidance from the OCC. So basically, it hasn't been done before where crypto's been used to fund these types of things like the capitalization of the bank, but it's up to the OCC. The OCC is the one who's going to be approving Ripple's national bank charter along with Circle and all these other companies. So it'll be interesting. So
I don't know why they wouldn't approve it. Most likely might.
See here, guidance from the OCC, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, and other agencies. So all of these agencies, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, and the OCC have all come out in I was gonna say in like 2 thumbs up of crypto, but that's not what I wanted to say. In support. It's early, all right, in support of crypto. And anyways, let's keep going here. Crypto use for liquidity. Banks and institutions are increasingly adopted XRP for liquidity management and collateral solutions, especially for cross-border payments to optimize capital efficiency. This is distant from using it in realized bank capital on balance sheets. XRP can be used within liquidity pool algorithms and for real-time payments, not as traditional capital reserves. And so can escrowed XRP be used for capitalization?
Locked amounts of XRP releasing 1 billion tokens monthly. So this is the escrow as XRP. I'm guessing this is what they have for development. If this gets sold to the market, I don't think they even have to sell this, right? If they're profitable already. But if this needs to be sold in case of emergency, if they burn this would be definitely a very big price jump as well. So 1 billion tokens monthly is like $300 million. So that is a lot of potential like dumping. On Ripple's ability to sell or allocate these assets as long as the sales are compliant with security and applicable laws. There's no law explicitly barring Ripple from allocating escrowed XRP, but using these tokens for regulatory capital would require approval from both banking and security regulators. I feel like they could get it, right? Escrowed XRP has instead been used to incentivize market makers, provide liquidity, and in private institutional agreements. So if like they sell someone, XRP privately, instead of like telling them, hey, go buy it on the market, they get a cash fund, they get an investment like $20 million, and they can get XRP for it instead. I feel like this has happened this year where, people bought stocks and now they own like 10% of XRP at valued at 30 cents.
Ripple's escrow system locks large amounts of XRP, releasing 1 billion tokens monthly. This system was designed to provide transparency rather than legal limitation on Ripple's ability to sell or allocate these assets as long as the sales are compliant with securities and applicable laws. Escrow and bank capital. There is no law explicitly barring Ripple from allocating escrowed XRP, but these tokens for regulatory capital would require approval from both banking and securities regulators. So, this might be...
I don't think they will ever need to sell this escrow. This escrow is like for liquidity. It's for other stuff. It's not really for selling on the market. So I'm not too afraid of like $300 million being sold. But, just this being locked away, I feel like a lot of people would feel very much happier.
Institutional agreements, reportedly something involving global entities, IMF, BIS, but details are typically private but speculative. And then, of course, Ripple did buy XRP off the open market to fund on-demand liquidity. I think they bought about 4 billion XRP. It says banks and payment providers often acquire XRP from the open market for ODL transactions, but these XRP are briefly held as a bridge, but not as capital reserves. For on-demand liquidity, XRP is purchased and used in a transaction and quickly sold for fiat. There's precedent that the U.S. institutions to buy XRP where it is not classified as a security and used as it operationally. But holding XRP as long-term reserves for Tier 1 capital faces regulatory resistance until Congress passes enabling legislation. So this could be really interesting timing, right? Because the Congress is working on the bill for crypto regulation here in the United States, the Clarity Act. If they are able to pass that, and somewhere in that massive bill, it says that crypto companies can use crypto, for capital reserves. That is going to exactly, align with what Ripple might be trying to do here. And it's just so interesting. It's just really cool.
They might use it for capital reserves, but how are they going to price that? Because it's gonna be the market taking the hit, right? I really didn't understand how is that going to help Ripple. So if Ripple gets a national bank, they could be like using the XRP itself for like the capital, if I understand correctly. If somebody knows down in the comments below, let me know. But it seems like that this one is much more bullish news. You'll see trillions of dollars of inflows, which isn't that insane, especially in the crypto markets. I'm not sure if it's like going to be 2025. That probably not. But 2026 is a much more bullish momentum. Mass adoption in just 3 to 5 years.
To think about, talk about research, and go over with you, gets the wheels spinning. All right, David Schwartz on XRP's future 2026. You will see trillions of dollars in inflows. Let's get it.
That's going to enable the sort of widespread adoption over the 3 to 5 year time frame. I think you're going to see the next wave of DeFi applications that solve real world problems like payments, like sensible investments, like loans. Yeah, I mean, if you think about what do people use, they have savings accounts, they have checking accounts, they have retirement accounts. I think you're going to see that mass adoption where people get those traditional financial services from blockchains like the XRP ledger over that 3 to 5 year time frame. As far as the
man, all right, Bill Morgan posted this. Well,
I mean, trillions, like 3 trillion, maybe we get like 1 trillion to XRP. If we even get 1 trillion, that is half of market cap of Bitcoin, which would mean XRP goes to $10 finally. I don't feel like that's that crazy. But XRP Ledger will power payments, loans, savings, and retirement accounts. It is going to power everything, but can it handle everything right now? Because I have heard it can only power like a portion of it.
Get it.
That's going to enable the sort of widespread adoption services.
$20 to $50 per.
So old system takes $20 to $50. I'm not too sure how many healthcare providers still use this old wire transfers, right? The wire transfers are super expensive, but isn't the world using like Swift nowadays, which is only like $1 or $2? So yeah, that's the really old system, like from the 19th century. But if they implement XRP, so it's not XRP, it could be banks as well working with them.
Wire, how does that make sense? XRP has the potential to enable low-cost, near-instant global payments. Our platform is being designed to harness this functionality for cross-border healthcare use cases with robust AML KYC compliance to ensure secure and compliant transactions. Remember, when you're dealing with pharmacies, you have to verify who's picking up the medication, right? Especially if it's something
that could be done on the ledger, which would be amazing. Again, we're still in very early stages because right now XRP is focusing on the banks before anything else.
That's, controlled. They want your ID. They want to know who you are. They're going to write down all the numbers. And so I'm sure that you've been there before, right? And so this would allow, right? Because Ripple's really built all of their technology around AML, KYC, and all of these different compliance because they knew who their customers were going to be. Financial institutions. And this fits perfectly with what Logistics is trying to do here. And so XRP potential here, XRP offers near instant low cost global transactions, potentially reducing costs from tens of dollars to cents. So, if they're spending millions of dollars or billions of dollars on payments per year or per 10 years, whatever it is, they can bring that down 95% by.
I'm not too sure. Like, do the hospitals have to send $30 to $50 each transaction? Wouldn't be the people paying the banks paying that? 50 to 70. I don't think they have to pay $30 to $50. Like, they just pay $1 to $2. Again, it's 10%. Maybe they're paying like 10%. I'm not too sure on the what the hospitals are doing here, but it definitely isn't that much. Seamless vendor payments, efficient cross-border telehealth reimbursements, and multinational employer support. like just any company using XRP, once it can go live, it still isn't like 100% live, will profit from that, in my opinion. So it's not just banks. It is any type of company.
There, you have to verify who's picking up the medication, right? Especially if it's something that's, controlled. They want your ID. They want to know who you are. They're going to write down all the numbers. And so I'm sure that you've been there before, right? And so this would allow, right? Because Ripple's really built all of their technology around AML, KYC, and all of these different compliance because they knew who their customers were going to be. Financial institutions. And this fits perfectly with what Logistics is trying to do here. And so XRP potential here, XRP offers near instant low cost global transactions, potentially reducing costs from tens of dollars to cents. So, if they're spending millions of dollars or billions of dollars on payments per year or per 10 years, whatever it is, they can bring that down 95% by using XRP. Why wouldn't you do that, right? Like, you're going to have way extra money. You can maybe lower the prices for the customers and still make a nice return. It's a win-win for everybody. It does talk about, right, we talk about compliance and security. I don't really need to get into that too much. 1.4 trillion pharma market. Pharmaceuticals rely heavily on fast, reliable, and error-free payments for everything from drug supply chains to telehealth, reimbursements, and multinational payroll. If Ripple and XRP gain traction in this space, it not only validates their technology, but creates network effects, driving adoption among other vendors, right? So you got to imagine, Genetics here has competition, right? At the highest level. If they're one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, they're going to be competing against other massive pharmaceutical companies. Now, when you're able to offer, get 80%, 90% savings on these payments by using digital assets, like XRP, that is going to put pressure on your competitors, right? Because now
I feel like, if you get like something for 90% less, if it works, the issue is you need to build a lot of trust in that industry. Like XRP needed years to build that trust. Imagine like if the systems go down, like you can't explain to these institutions, oh, sorry, we can't pay you or we can't do these transfers. The banks went down, right? That's why they're in testing phases and keeping sure that XRP will be 100% having an uptime. This is what they're focusing on right now.
Now you have choices, right? You can lower prices a bit if you wanted to and make it really competitive.
It's not about getting prices. Some of these corporations I feel like would still pay more if it means it's safe and, running safe and sound.
Against your competitor, or you can find some way to use that money and leverage that money to do something else. Maybe the savings, you buy more XRP and you leverage that as a treasury. There's just so many other things that you can do here that really opens everything up. It's actually pretty cool. And here are the strategic advantages. Efficiency leads to innovation. Rapid settlement and low fees may allow new business models such as seamless telehealth across borders and real-time chain supply settlement. Competitive positioning, Ripple and XRP become industry standards, opening up additional sectors beyond pharma, similar transformation, and the ability to handle high transaction volume at critical given the pharma industry scale. So how many transactions? All right, here is the update with case. James K. Filan posted this yesterday. The SEC has filed a status report with the Court of Appeals, noting that the parties have filed a joint stipulation of dismissal of the appeals, and the stipulation remains pending and therefore awaiting approved by the court. Okay. And so here's the document. I did throw this into Perplexity and make sure that it was legitimate. And there was a status report filed yesterday, August 15th. This video will come out on Sunday. By the way, have a fantastic week ahead. You got this. All right. Ripple's
penalty and settlement. Ripple agreed to pay 125 million penalty. Like a lot of people are worried, will this crash the XRP price? Just the amount that they made this month and the $200 million deal, I don't feel like the $125 million penalty is even that problematic for them.
Penalty and settlement, Ripple agreed to pay the $125 million. The end of the appeals means the final judgment will remain in effect, but no further appeals or federal litigation are anticipated tied to XRP's regulatory status as the federal level. It does say pending approval. The stipulation is not yet formally approved by the court, but this is considered a final administrative step with no indication of delays or obstruction from either side.
So yeah, with this finally being over, I feel like they will much rather pay 125 million and just get it over with, right? And then they can focus on other projects.
Approval is expected to occur soon. unless the court raises procedural objections. So looks like we're all home free here unless something truly, else happens. I don't want to say it. I don't want to jinx it. Knock on the wood. Knock on wood. Okay, I
just don't feel like this will happen because, at least not from the legal case, didn't they just ask for the court document for them to just finally close it? Unless they would reopen the case somehow, it's going to be very hard. Breaking: Ripple CEO confirms working with Elon Musk. I don't believe this news at all. Like, where do we find this type of a news? Bringing the price to 600. If he doesn't announce it on a tweet, I cannot believe it.
See this? I wasn't really too excited with this post. This is from Ripple Queen. It says Ripple CEO confirms working with Elon Musk. And this is not like, this is a new post, like in the last 24 hours. Of course, we threw it into Perplexity. I said, hey, can we fact check this and just get some information here?
If Ripple Queen was, if Elon Musk was working with XRP, everybody would be talking about it. This would be like the story of the century. That's why this is such a thing. Like, there's a lot of news like that. Personally, there's no evidence. And there's, you cannot just call a price like that. It doesn't make sense.
There is no credible evidence or official statement from Ripple CEO or reputable source confirming that Ripple is working closely with Elon Musk, nor is there any announcement about them integrating XRP with Musk's X program. Now, I've done some videos on this before, looking to see if we could find any real connections, and we couldn't find any connections. We do know that Elon wants to build an everything app, and part of that will be borrowing, lending, and payments. And what a better use case for something like XRP or XLM to do.
I don't understand why he would use XRP. Why wouldn't he just use Dogecoin, for example?
That. And so people speculate online that Elon Musk is going to either work with Ripple or with Stellar, but we'll have to see. They can obviously go any which way they want. Remember, Binance Square posts are not from Binance, right? Anybody can post on Binance Square, right? Your cousin.
It's kind of like Twitter, yeah. So don't believe that, guys. But there's plenty of news as well. I will keep you updated. It is looking pretty nice, especially with their banking stuff. We do have more confirmation as well on why XRP dumped